They say a family business can unite a family, or destroy it. I never thought mine would be torn apart, not by strangers, but by the very people I raised under my roof. And what I'm about to tell you, it began with a single betrayal, in the same boardroom where my husband and I once dreamed of building a legacy. But that day, instead of unity, I watched my daughter stab me and her siblings in the heart with a smile on her face. It had only been 6 weeks since I buried my husband. 6 weeks since I stood over his grave, clutching the hands of my 3 children, Camela, my eldest at 30, Jake, my son of 28, and Emily, my youngest, just 24. The will had been read. Everything was clear. The company my husband and I built from the ground up, sleepless nights, endless sacrifices, was left to the 4 of us, equal shares, equal power, equal responsibility. And on that day, I walked into the boardroom with hope. I thought it would be the start of a new chapter. Painful, yes, but one where my children and I would stand shoulder to shoulder, carrying forward the vision of the man we loved. But I was wrong. The air was tense that morning. The boardroom, with its long mahogany table and leather chairs, felt colder than ever before. The portraits of past directors stared down at us, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. I took my seat at the head of the table, the place my husband once occupied. Jake sat to my right, stiff and frowning, his jaw tight. Emily was beside him, her nervous hands twisting the strap of her purse. And then there was Camela, my eldest, confident, poised, dressed in a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled back as if she were already in charge. Something about the way she looked at me unsettled me. The meeting began with the usual formalities, the board murmuring about transitions and next steps. I cleared my throat to speak, to propose that we, as a family, take time to grieve before rushing into major decisions. But before I could finish, Camela leaned forward, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Mother," she said smoothly, "there's no need for delay. The company already has a new managing director." Her words echoed in the room. Jake jerked his head toward her. Emily's lips parted in confusion. And I felt my heart stop. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice low but firm. She smiled then, the kind of smile that hides daggers. "Victor has already been appointed. My husband is the new managing director." For a moment, silence. Heavy. Crushing. Then Jake slammed his hand on the table. "What? Without consulting us? Without consulting Mother?" Camela's eyes narrowed. "Jake, please. Victor is the obvious choice. He has the qualifications, the vision, the connections. This company needs strong leadership, and frankly, none of us are prepared to handle it. None of us." Her words burned me more than the betrayal itself. I looked at Emily. Her wide eyes darted between us, desperate to keep the peace. "Camela? But the will, Father said everything belongs to all of us equally. We're supposed to decide these things together." Camela waved her hand dismissively. "Father wanted the company to thrive, Emily, and it can't survive if we drag our feet. Victor has already been endorsed by the board. It's done." "Board? Endorsed?" My chest tightened. I turned to the directors seated across from me, men who had worked with my husband for decades. Some looked away, shame in their eyes. Others stared blankly, complicit. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't sudden. This was planned. How could she do this? My own daughter. I raised Camela to be strong, independent, capable, and now she used that strength to sideline her own family. I remembered the nights when her father and I stayed awake, working on the company's future. Camela used to peek in, her little feet patting on the marble floor, asking if she could help staple papers just to feel part of the dream. And now, she was handing that dream to her husband, not to her family, not to her blood, to him. "Camela," I said slowly, my voice trembling, "you had no right to make that decision alone. This company belongs to all of us, to your siblings, to me, to the family your father built." Her eyes hardened. "Mother, you don't understand. Times have changed. Sentiment won't keep this company alive. Victor knows what he's doing. If we want to survive, we need him." Jake pushed his chair back, his voice rising. "No, Camela. What we need is honesty. What we need is family. You went behind our backs and betrayed us." Emily whispered, "Please, stop. This isn't what Father would have wanted." But Camela leaned back in her chair, victorious. "You're all overreacting. The board trusts Victor, and so should you." But then came the blow that cut me to the core. I turned to one of the directors, an older man who had been my husband's friend for years. Is this true? I asked. Did you all agree to this? He shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Anderson, Camela approached us weeks ago. She presented a plan. We thought it was best for stability. Weeks ago. That meant while I was mourning my husband, while I was struggling to breathe through my grief, my daughter was plotting in the shadows, rallying support against her own family. I felt Jake's hand grip mine under the table, steadying me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. And Camela? She sat tall, proud, as if she had won. I rose slowly from my chair, the room watching in silence. Camela, you may think you've outsmarted us. You may believe that giving Victor control will secure your place. But this betrayal, your betrayal, will not stand. She tilted her chin, a smirk tugging at her lips. Oh, Mother, she whispered, you're too late, it's already done. And in that moment, I knew. This was only the beginning of a war that would tear my family apart. And that was the moment I realized the battle for my husband's legacy had begun. But trust me, what happened next was far darker than any of us could have imagined. That night, my house felt colder than any graveyard. Jake stormed back and forth across the living room, his voice echoing off the walls. We can't let her get away with this, Mother. We need to fight, legally, publicly, whatever it takes. I sat on the couch, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Emily sat beside me, her face pale, her voice a whisper. Jake, please. Fighting will only make things worse. Maybe Camela's right. Maybe Victor can lead the company. At least until we find our footing. Jake spun toward her, his eyes blazing. Emily, can't you see what's happening? He's not leading the company, he's stealing it, and Camela's handing it to him on a silver platter. Emily's voice trembled. She's our sister. Don't we owe her the chance to prove she's not making a mistake? I looked at them both, my children, torn in two. And I felt my own heart split in the middle. I wanted to protect them. I wanted to keep us together. But every instinct in me screamed that Jake was right. Victor wasn't here to help us, he was here to consume us. The next day, I went back to the company headquarters with Jake and Emily at my side. The building felt different, like a stranger's house wearing the mask of a home. The receptionist, who had greeted me warmly for years, looked uneasy. And down the hallway, I saw unfamiliar faces, men in sharp suits I didn't recognize. When we stepped into the main office floor, my heart sank. Desks once filled by loyal employees who had worked with my husband for decades were empty. Some were already packed up in boxes, and the people sitting in their places, Victor's people, stared back at us like guards in enemy territory. Jake clenched his fists. He's already started replacing them, I whispered, almost to myself. These men and women, they built this company with your father. They gave their lives to it. And now, I didn't finish. My voice broke. Then we heard his voice, smooth, confident, cold. Well, if it isn't the welcoming committee. Victor stepped out of his new glass-walled office, adjusting his tie like a king stepping onto his throne. Camela was behind him, her hand resting proudly on his arm. Lillian, he said with a mocking smile, I was wondering when you'd drop by. You could have saved yourself the trip. Everything's already under control. I stood tall, even though my knees trembled. Under control? You've gutted the company overnight, fired the people who stood by my husband for years. This isn't control, it's exploitation. He chuckled, the sound sharp as glass. Exploitation? No. Efficiency. Those dinosaurs were holding this place back. I'm bringing in people who understand growth, expansion, profit. Isn't that what your husband would have wanted? Jake stepped forward, his voice loud. You don't get to speak for my father. You don't get to speak for us. Victor's eyes glinted. Oh, but I do. Because unlike the rest of you, I'm not afraid to lead. I turned to Camela then, my voice pleading. Camela, can't you see what's happening? He's not building this company. He's taking it from us, from you, from your siblings, from me. But her face was hard, her eyes cold. You're blinded by sentiment, Mother. Victor is saving us. You just can't see it yet. Jake slammed a folder onto the nearest desk. Saving us? He's consolidating power. Look around you. He's turning Father's company into his empire. Victor's smirk widened. Finally, someone understands. Empire. That's exactly the vision, and soon nothing will stand in the way. My breath caught. What do you mean, nothing will stand in the way? He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only we could hear, because Camela already gave me her shares. The world tilted. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The words lodged in my chest like a knife. I looked at Camela, my own daughter, my firstborn. Tell me he's lying. Tell me you didn't. But she didn't answer. She looked away. And that silence was louder than any confession. Jake's voice broke with fury. You what? You handed him your shares? Are you insane? That gives him control of the board. Emily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Camela, how could you? I staggered back, gripping the edge of a desk. You gave away your birthright, the company your father built with his sweat, his blood, everything he wanted for you, for us, and you've handed it to your husband? Camela finally met my eyes, her voice cold and steady. I did what had to be done. Victor has the vision. We need him. I whispered, my heart breaking. No, Camela. He's destroying us. The room was spinning. Jake's fists were clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Emily was trembling, her tears spilling silently. I forced myself to stand tall, though I felt like collapsing. Camela, I said, my voice shaking, you don't understand. He will ruin you. He will ruin all of us. But she only tilted her chin higher, her arm tightening around Victor's. No, Mother, he's not ruining us. He's saving us. And with those words, I realized the battle wasn't just for the company anymore. It was for my daughter's soul. And that was when I knew things had spiraled beyond betrayal. Camela wasn't just siding with Victor, she had armed him with the very power to destroy us. But the storm that followed? That was darker, more dangerous than any of us could have imagined. Weeks passed. I tried to keep my head high, but each day, new rumors reached me. Victor was pushing reckless deals, projects that bled money instead of making it. Longtime partners whispered about shady transactions. Even the employees he had handpicked began to question his methods. The company, my husband's legacy, was being hollowed from the inside out. Jake saw it too. My son, determined and relentless, refused to sit back while everything collapsed. One night, he came to me with fire in his eyes. Mother, he said, dropping a thick folder onto my dining table, something isn't right. I've spoken to Chris, my lawyer friend. We've started digging into the financials. I opened the folder, page after page of figures, accounts, transfers. My stomach turned. Money was vanishing, millions gone, and not into investments, but into accounts overseas. Jake's voice was sharp with anger. He's siphoning money. This isn't just mismanagement, Mother. It's theft. I pressed my hand to my chest, my heart aching. My God, your father worked his whole life for this company, and Victor, he's tearing it apart. But Jake wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice low, and I have reason to believe he's planning something bigger, something worse. Meanwhile, Emily's loyalty began to crack. For so long, she clung to the hope that Camela was right, that Victor might somehow be the savior the company needed. But one evening, she visited their home, and what she saw shattered her illusions. She told me about it later, her voice trembling. Mother, I walked in on them arguing. Victor was yelling at Camela, calling her stupid, saying she was useless without him. He told her the only reason she had power was because of him. And she just stood there. She didn't fight back. She looked broken. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to believe she was in control, but, Mother, she's not. He is, and he doesn't love her. He loves the company. Hearing my youngest daughter finally speak those words I had known in my heart all along, was both painful and relieving. Painful, because it meant Camela was trapped in a cage she didn't even see. Relieving, because at last, Emily was on our side. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Jake burst into my study late one night, holding another set of documents. His hands were shaking, his eyes burning with rage. Mother, you need to see this. I took the papers from him, my fingers trembling, and as my eyes scanned the words, I felt the floor vanish beneath me. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just corruption. Victor was planning to sell the company, my husband's company, to an international buyer. Quietly, without the family's knowledge. The signatures were nearly finalized. He's going to sell everything, Mother, Jake said, his voice breaking. He's cashing us out. And once he does, we'll have nothing. No company, no legacy, nothing. I sank into a chair, tears burning my eyes. My husband's voice echoed in my memory. The nights he spoke of leaving behind a legacy for our children, a foundation that would stand long after he was gone. And now, Victor was preparing to wipe it all away. The timing could not have been more cruel. The company's annual gala loomed, a glittering event where shareholders, partners, and dignitaries gathered to celebrate the company's achievements. Except this year, there was nothing to celebrate. I went with Jake and Emily. Camela and Victor arrived like royalty, she in a sparkling silver gown clinging to his arm, he in a tailored tuxedo, smiling as though nothing were amiss. But beneath the chandeliers and the music, tension buzzed like electricity. Whispers followed them wherever they went. Everyone had heard the rumors. Everyone was watching. And then, it happened. Jake, standing tall and unshaken, walked to the podium. He cleared his throat, his voice steady as he addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I know tonight is meant for celebration, but I cannot stand here and let lies dress themselves as achievements. You deserve the truth. The crowd hushed. Victor has been siphoning money, millions, into offshore accounts, funds that belong to this company, to its shareholders, to every man and woman who has built this empire, and I have the documents to prove it. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Eyes darted to Victor. His confident smile faltered for the first time. Camela's face turned white. She clutched his arm, but he didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on Jake, and then on me. Camela, humiliated in front of everyone, turned on us with venom. "How dare you?" she screamed, pointing at Jake. "How dare you try to destroy my husband, our company? This is nothing but lies." Her voice cracked, but her pride wouldn't let her admit the truth. I stepped forward, my voice quiet but firm. "Camela, open your eyes. He's destroying you. He's destroying everything your father built." But before she could answer, Victor leaned close to me. So close I could feel his breath on my ear. His voice was a whisper, low and chilling. "You think this is over? You think you've won? You can't stop what's coming." And in that moment, I knew the gala was not the end. It was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. And that was the night the mask slipped. The night the world saw a glimpse of Victor's corruption and Camela's denial. But what came next shook us all to our core. Because the fight to stop Victor would not be fought in ballrooms or boardrooms, it would be fought in the cold, unforgiving walls of a courtroom. I will never forget the heavy silence that filled the courtroom that morning. It wasn't just another legal proceeding. It was the day my family's future, my late husband's legacy, and my children's unity would either be saved or destroyed forever. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Jake, my son, who had fought harder than anyone to defend what was rightfully ours. His face was stern, but I could see the quiet storm in his eyes, the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. Across the aisle sat Victor, smug and composed, as if he were untouchable. And next to him, my daughter, Camela. My heart tightened. Even after all Victor had done, even after all the pain, there she was, still clinging to the man who had stolen from us. I wondered if she could see through him, or if she was still blinded by love and ambition. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Our lawyer laid out the case. Victor had not only manipulated Camela into signing over her shares of the company, but had also attempted to sell the company without the consent of the rightful heirs. It was betrayal, layered upon betrayal. When the defense spoke, Victor leaned back in his chair, his words dripping with arrogance. He painted himself as a visionary businessman, the only one capable of leading the company. He claimed my late husband would have wanted him to take charge, that he was protecting the company from being ruined by family squabbles. I clenched my fists under the table. He was using my husband's name, my husband's honor, to mask his greed. But then came the moment that none of us expected. Emily, my youngest daughter, rose to testify. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the stand, but her voice was steady. "Victor manipulated us," she began. "He told me that if I didn't support him, I'd lose everything, that my brother Jake was reckless, and my mother was too emotional to handle the company. He said the only way forward was through him." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge leaned forward. Emily's words cut through the lies like a blade, and for the first time, I saw Camela's confident expression falter. She looked at her sister with wide, questioning eyes, as if a curtain had been pulled back on a truth she had long tried to ignore. Our lawyer then revealed evidence, bank statements, forged signatures, secret transfers. Piece by piece, Victor's empire of deceit crumbled before the court. He wasn't a savior. He was a thief. And then the breaking point came. Camela stood, Her voice shook as she looked at Victor. Is it true? She demanded, her tone filled with both fear and rage. Tell me the truth, Victor. Did you forge the papers? Did you use me to take everything from my family? Victor tried to grab her hand, tried to silence her with a whisper, but she pulled away. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her entire body trembling. I gave up everything for you, she cried. I turned against my own mother, my own brother and sister, because I believed in you. And now, I see it. You never loved me. You loved the power. Gasps filled the courtroom. For the first time, Victor's mask cracked. His composure slipped, and anger twisted across his face. You're pathetic, he spat at her. You wouldn't have had anything if not for me. You're nothing without me. That was the final straw. The judge's gavel struck hard against the bench. The evidence was undeniable. The testimonies irrefutable. The ruling was swift. Victor was guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted unlawful sale of the company. The bailiffs moved in to arrest him, and for the first time, I saw fear in Victor's eyes. He struggled, shouting curses, his arrogance shattering as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The man who thought he could manipulate us all was dragged out of the courtroom in disgrace. Camela collapsed into her seat, sobbing. I wanted to hate her, to remind her of the pain she had caused, but in that moment I saw not a betrayer, but a broken daughter who had been deceived just as we had. When the verdict was announced, the company was restored to its rightful heirs. Myself, Jake, Emily, and yes, despite everything, we were still a family. Later that evening, we gathered at the company headquarters. The same building my husband and I had built from nothing. The same place where Victor had tried to erase us. As I stood in the boardroom with my children, I felt both relief and sorrow. We had won, but at a great cost. I turned to my children, my voice heavy but resolute. This company was meant to unite us, but look how close we came to losing everything. Not just the business, but each other. Remember this, greed and betrayal can tear a family apart faster than any enemy from outside. But truth will always find its way. Jake stood tall, no longer the overlooked son, but the man his father always believed he could be. Emily, her courage finally shining through, held her head high. Camela, wounded but repentant, nodded through her tears, as if silently begging for forgiveness. And just when I thought the story had ended, our lawyer handed me an envelope. He explained it was a letter my husband had written before his passing, kept in confidence until the time was right. My hands shook as I unfolded it, hearing my husband's words in my mind as I read aloud. If this letter finds you, it means the company has faced the test I always feared. Lillian, my love, I trust you to keep our family together. But when it comes to leadership, I have always believed Jake has the heart and integrity to guide the company into the future. Not because he is the eldest, but because he carries the spirit of what we built, honesty, resilience, and vision. Trust him. Tears blurred my vision, but my heart swelled with pride. My husband had seen what I saw that very day in the courtroom. Jake wasn't just a fighter, he was a leader. And so with my children around me, I closed that chapter. But before I leave you with this story, let me say this. Wealth can build a family or destroy it. But legacy is not about money, it's about trust. And trust, once broken, is the hardest thing to rebuild. So I ask you, as you've listened to my story, what kind of legacy are you building in your own life? If this story touched you, if you found meaning in it, I invite you to join me here again. Subscribe to this channel, share this journey with others, and together, let's explore more stories that remind us of what truly matters. Family, love, and the courage to stand for what is right.